But if tragedy, if and when tragedy strikes either of us, I hope that one of us is standing when it blows past. And that there's a harshness about that that's unbelievably cruel, because you say, well, if my mother died, I could live. Well, what kind of monster are you exactly? The death of your mother doesn't do you in? Well, it turns out that being a monster is the right thing. So, and that's a rough thing to learn, but it's necessary to learn. Because it also makes you, at some point, for example, as you get older, by the time you're in your mid-20s, something like that, you should start having a relationship with your parents that's approximately one of peers. And you can tell if you have that. So here's a little trick you can use. So you have parents, obviously. They have friends. You probably care what your parents think, I would imagine. Do you care what their friends think of you? And the answer to that is, well, not nearly as much. And so then I would say, well, why do you care what your parents think of you then? They're the same people. You know what I mean? It's just luck of the draw that your parents are someone else's kids' friends. They don't think the same way about them that you do. Well, that's where you see that you have a projection. Right? If by the time you're 30, if what your parents think of you matters more than what, say, a random set of their friends think of you, then you've still got your parents confused with God. That's one way of looking at it. You've still got them confused with an archetype, and you're still a child. And you might think, well, it's pretty damn rude not to think about what your parents think of you anymore, not to care. It's like, yeah, it's kind of rude, but maybe you'll be useful for them when they get old. And that's a much better form of caring. It's like you're going to be independent enough and strong enough and detached enough so that when the power dynamic shifts, which it will, that you'll be the person that can carry things forward. Well, you can't do a better thing for them than that, right? That's the best of all possible outcomes for your parents. Well, you can think about the world this way. You can think about it as your orderly little plan. That's a place, and you can think about it as the place that things that disrupt your plan comes from. That's another place. This is a bigger place than this, because there's an endless number of things that can disrupt your plan, and only a tiny number of them that can, that will help you work it out. So part of the question then too is like, are you the friend of your plan, or are you the friend of the thing that disrupts your plan? And I would say you should work to become the friend of the thing that disrupts your plan, because there's a lot of that. And then if you become the friend of the thing that disrupts your plan, then you start to develop strength in proportion to the disruptive force. And that's really what you want. You want to be able to implement your plan, obviously, but you want to be able to take on the consequences of error and learn from it. And then you win constantly, because even if something goes sideways, you think there's something to be derived from this. That's wisdom, fundamentally. So those are the eternal domains, right? There's the domain of order. That's a snake, by the way, and that's a domain of chaos. And that's the world. And maybe you're in the order and maybe you're in the chaos, but those can flip on you. And maybe you shouldn't be in either of those places. Maybe you should be right in the middle. And that's where you should be, as far as I can tell. And I think this is another escape from postmodern nihilism, let's say. That's actually a real place. It's not metaphysical, or maybe it is, but it's metaphysical if metaphysics is more real than physics. And you can tell when you're at that place, because that's a maximally meaningful place. And you drift in and out of it all the time in your life. And when things are really bad for you, you're not there hardly at all, right? Because everything's overwhelming you, or the things have become sterile. But if you watch your life, even over a week or two, you'll see that now and then you're there. Think, you stand up straighter, right? Because you're in the right place at the right time. You think, aha, I got the forces of chaos and order properly balanced. It's unstable and it'll fall apart on you. But you can practice bringing things together continually, and then you can end up so that you're there more often than not. And then that's a meta place. It's not a place, it's a meta place. And it's a place that you can be in all places. And it's not an illusion of any sort. It's the deepest reality. Your nervous system is always orienting yourself. Is always orienting you to that place. Always. And that's because it's a real place. One of the things I tell young men, well, and young women as well, but the young men really need to hear this more, I think, is that you should be a monster. Because everyone says, well, you should be harmless. virtuous. You shouldn't do anyone any harm. You should sheath your competitive instinct. You shouldn't try to win. You know, you don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be too assertive. You want to take a back seat and all of that. It's like, no. Wrong. You should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it. Well, lots of them are competitive. They're low in agreeableness, you know, because that's part of being competitive temperamentally. It's like, is there something wrong with being competitive? There's nothing wrong with it. There's something wrong with cheating. There's something wrong with being a tyrant. There's something wrong with winning unfairly. All of those things are bad, but you don't want people to win? What's the difference between trying to win and striving? You want to eradicate striving?
Important.
One definition of a winner is someone who never let losing stop them.
Yes.
You know, and the idea that a single loss in a competition is somehow a defeat is completely insane. First of all, well, let's say you're a hockey player and you're a good player and you lose the tournament. It's like, well, so what? You played the game. You're increasing your skills. It's like there's always next time. And one of the things that I've also been telling people, informing people about, is the idea that life isn't a game. It's a series of games. And the right ethic is to be the winner of the series of games. And part of that means you have to learn how to be a good loser, because you're not going to win every single game. Let's say that you could pick your level of competition in life to some degree. Okay, so let's say you pick a level of competition where you're always winning. It's like, well, all that means is you've picked the wrong level of competition.
Yes.
Because, you know, like, let's say you're a grandmaster chess player and all you do is play amateurs, and every night you go home and congratulate yourself on what a genius you are because you just stomp these people left, right, and center. It's like, you're not a genius, you're a dimwit.
Right.
What you should be doing is playing people who are beating you, like, well, as much as you can tolerate.
Right.
So maybe that's 40% of the time, maybe it's 60% of the time. But that way, because to be a winner, you want to be disciplined, you want to know what you're doing, and then you want to be on the edge where your skills are being developed. And if you're going to be on the edge where your skills are going to be developed, you're at a place where losing is always a possibility, because otherwise you're not pushing yourself beyond your current capacity. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. So you need to have a hierarchy of improvement. You need to be aiming for something, and that means you're going to be lesser than people who've already attained along that dimension. It can give rise to envy. So the question is, who should you defeat in the final analysis? And the answer is, you should defeat your former self. You should be constantly trying to do that. And you're the right control for yourself too, because you're the one who's had all your advantages and disadvantages. And so if you want to compete fairly with someone, then you should be competing with you. If you're improving yourself, then what you are doing is competing with your lesser self. And then you might also ask, well, what is that lesser self? And that lesser self would be resentful and bitter and aggressive and vengeance-seeking and all of those things that go along with having a negative moral character. And those are things that interfere with your ability to progress as you move forward through life. So it's very necessary to understand that this is why, you know, I've been stressing this idea of personal responsibility.